Welcome to Papillion UnScripted. I am Michael Severe. It's the place to go to hear from people who truly make Papillion feel like home. We have a really special one for you today, and it's with two guys who are helping to basically bring a helicopter back to life. Joining us, Dylan Driscoll from Iowa Western. He is aviation there and aviation maintenance, and also Ron Elwell, who is a former crew chief on the Huey and is helping everything out. How you guys doing?
Very
awesome.
good. Glad to be here.
Let's start on this date when we're taping, August 19th. Where are we with the Huey? How's it doing?
Well, right now we're ready to send it to paint. So we've got it all cleaned up. We've got it, I'd say 95% assembled. So we're waiting to tape it and paint it, add the stencils, and that'll pretty much be it.
Ron, when did you first hear that the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial was going to happen? And then where did you get brought in terms of for the helicopter help?
Yeah, so Carlos Acosta and I were doing some Sarpy County networking group, and basically there was two Vietnam veterans sitting there. I didn't know what we were doing it for. And they give this $5,000 check that they had raised money for through the Sarpy County Chamber. And I told Carlos, I said, hey man, you know, those guys deserve a welcome home. I got a welcome home. They didn't get the same welcome home I got. So I went over and I introduced myself and, you know, asked them about themselves, and George and Tom were both there. So George, the treasurer and secretary, and then Tom, the president of the foundation. So they kind of told me about it, and they were like, yeah, what'd you do in the military? I was like, I was a helicopter mechanic, you know, and they're like, oh, great. We got a Huey that we just got from Vermont, you know, and I'm like, oh, wow. And it's like, where's it going? And they're like, we're going to put it on a stand. I said, okay, cool. You know, and they said, would you be willing to help? I was like, sure. And they said, well, here's this guy, Dylan, just give him a call and hook up with Dylan. And so I did, and he was like, fantastic, finally somebody else. And I was like, great. So me and Dylan got together and kind of came up with a plan, and he pretty much handles all the logistics and some of the maintenance stuff as well, and does fabulous. And then I kind of just say, well, this is what needs to get done, and we kind of, both of us, grabbed people we know and brought them into the place to help us build that helicopter up. So it's been a journey. It was almost 2 years ago I allotted it to this, so 2020, right after COVID.
Wow, you guys are moving to paint. That's awesome.
Yep.
What was the feeling like when you first saw the bird, Dylan? Like when it came, was it on the truck? Is that the
It was on a truck. It was a little rougher than I expected.
I bet.
It was in more pieces than I expected, but it was just really exciting. And then knowing a little bit about the history at that point, I was just immediately drawn to it. And I wanted to do whatever we could to be a part of it at Iowa Western. So
how did it end up at Iowa Western?
I was contacted by J.R. Richardson from Bellevue University. They were looking for a place to store the helicopter while we did the restoration. So that's where I came in. We met, and I said, yeah, we can make some room in the hangar. So we did. And then kind of as time went by, I started to run the nuts and bolts of the project, which I'm an aircraft mechanic, but I'd never worked on a Huey before, which was great when I met Ron, because he knows where everything goes and how it all goes together. So we immediately hit it off, and just been working together to source parts and, like I said, figure out what goes where and what we're missing, because it's kind of like a giant puzzle.
Big puzzle.
You show up at the hangar and it's in two pieces.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like?
Oh man, I walked in there and I was like, oh my gosh. And I looked at Dylan and I was like, well, it's a helicopter, you know. I was like, it's there. So the tail boom was cut, and I showed Dylan. I was like, we can just take off these 4 bolts on the back and it would have transported fine. So it was like, there was a lot to, as we looked at it and kind of started figuring out what needs to be done, I was overwhelmed. I'm like, man, this is a project. I knew we were on a time frame. I'm like, gosh, well, all right, well, let's do this. And so it was pretty overwhelming, though.
Social media's helped you a lot, right? Being able to contact people, be able to get parts, meet different people.
It's been huge, Alan Ortiz out of Florida, actually, I met him through Facebook. He restores Hueys for static display. That's what he does. And so he was able to put me into touch with a bunch of parts that we needed. He was really worked with us, gave us some great prices. I was amazed. he really kind of injected himself in the project and made it his little personal goal to help us however he could. So he's really bent over backwards to supply us parts, ship them. You know, we didn't even know exactly what we were missing, so he was there to say, oh, you're going to need this, you're going to need this. He could see ahead through the project. Later on, you're going to need this and this. So it was just huge. I could have never done it without Ron and Alan, that's for sure. So once we got the three of us together, everything started to kind of process a bit quicker, and we've made some really good progress in the last couple months.
A lot of cool parts to this. I think the coolest part for me is the generations working on this thing.
Yeah.
Right? You got these kids down as students. You got somebody like you who was, you know, the Afghan era or, you know, that era. And you got Vietnam folks.
Yep.
Can you kind of talk about that? You guys all coming together working on this helicopter?
So there's a lot of guys that support, you know, obviously Vietnam veterans and all veterans. So I reached out to a bunch of them. So Tom Kimmett, he's big in the veterans community here. It's prior Air Force. David Guy, Ron Salisbury. He was a former Army Huey mechanic, so he ended up getting in touch with us, and we were like, come on, you know, the more the merrier, the more people that know what's going on. So David Guy was a former Marine 53 mechanic, so we got these older guys, and then me, Dylan, and we've had some of the young kids come out and help us, and man, it's been incredible the amount of support we get. Usually you call somebody, and like these guys last minute, typically me and Dylan kind of wait till like we get everything in, call them and be like, hey, can you work on Tuesday?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
They're there. So, and they all have full-time jobs, but they're all veterans, retired, or, you know, separated honorably. So it's great to have those generations. You know, Ron Salisbury was in Desert Storm. So, I mean, there's guys from all levels there. Even George Abbott has turned a wrench on the helicopter a time or two.
Nice.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Dylan, when you see the students, and I remember you guys were trying to figure out the boom, and you found out ways to do certain things, and you hand it over to the students, and they get it done. What's that feeling like?
It just feels great to be. That's the most satisfying part of my job, is seeing students come in, and as we go through the program, they get more and more competent and confident with their mechanical skills. So, you know, being able to give them an item where the helicopter's not going to fly again, so a little bit of pressure off there, and I think that helps them kind of relax, and they kind of just go at it, and seeing the work that they have done is just, that's the most rewarding part for me. And then talking to the veterans and hearing their stories, and just seeing their emotional reaction to the helicopter, that's the best part for me. And it's just, I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole researching and all that kind of stuff. So the students get such a boost from just the excitement of the whole operation. Meeting the older guys and stuff like that, it just adds so much to their educational experience, I think.
You mentioned the history of the helicopter. I remember being in the MEPS and them saying, here's some choices of MOSs for you, and then they play you the video of the 67, from November at the time, which is the helicopter crew chief, and I remember watching the video thinking, wow, this helicopter's incredible. First of all, how's it fly? Beating the air into submission. And why do you think this helicopter has the legend that it has?
Yeah, it's iconic. So, and most people have seen We Were Soldiers Once and Young. The Idrang Valley, that's where, in the late 50s, helicopters were used in Korea, and then Bell developed the Huey, which then went into production for Vietnam. And it was the first time helicopters had ever been used in combat to that exact extent. And they couldn't have gotten anywhere without the logistical movements to Vietnam. Would be super hard with trucks, landmines, all that. And so they were able to move troops with those helicopters. And they made so many of those Hueys, it just became iconic of the Vietnam War. And it just became an iconic helicopter through life. I mean, they use it for everything. Now you see them still in firefighting and, logging operations. So that helicopter, a lot like the B-52 and those Air Force airplanes that have lasted a long time, it's a fortress, and it's just a great product, and it always does its job. I mean, the Marine Corps took it and they put 2 engines on it, 4 rotor blades.
Exactly,
and
the mic,
we're gonna make it even better, and so they did, and it's just an outstanding helicopter, and safe, very safe. So, obviously, rotor blades come off, you kind of have catastrophe on your hands. But most of the time, that thing can take a beating. You look at these old pictures, and you can see where, rockets have gone through the tail boom, and that thing's still flying. So, yeah, it's incredible helicopter. So I think it it really built itself and defined itself through the Vietnam War, and most Vietnam veterans, you know, that's what they associate with the war. So that was their ticket out, their freedom bird home some days. So
Unique sound too.
Unique
Those
sound,
blades
yeah.
make a unique sound, kind of like a Harley makes a unique sound.
Yeah.
So there's so many layers of the story.
Yeah.
You hear from a guy, Craig Fouts, who happened to be the crew chief
Jeez.
of this helicopter right when it came off of the line.
Yeah.
How crazy was that to hear from that guy?
Oh man, it was nuts.
Just the little bits of history as it came in, and then that piece, and hearing from him, and you know, he has a diary from, you know, on
That's
his 21st
incredible.
his 21st birthday, he went and picked that Huey up brand new. I think he said it had 6 hours around something like that on
Yeah.
it, and he's just all the documentation. That's how we figured out the original livery, Snoopy on the nose, and that kind of thing. So to me, that kind of was just the cherry on top. Like, wow, the history came together so much.
Yeah.
It just got, you know, it helps. It's a lot of work, and it can be overwhelming. It helps, you know, energize you and want you to keep going to the finish line.
A lot of guys
Yeah.
keep journals, but what that guy kept was a book.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like every day that he was in Nam, so he extended for 6 months, I believe, so he was there a year and a half. And literally, there's every day he covered it. I mean, I've spent 2-3 hours on the phone talking to him. He lives in San Diego. Boy, I was like, man, I kept a journal, but it's not even close. This guy like logged everything. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. So now, you got to get it painted. You said.
Yep.
The Snoopy, the original Snoopy, is going to go on the front. Who's going to get that done?
Yeah.
He showed me some of his work. I was like, "You sure you want to take that on?" And he showed me some of his airbrush work. He's really good. So
Yeah.
he's got my confidence, that's for sure.
At least I got his
Yeah,
confidence.
there you go.
George
Yeah.
has put a little pressure on me too. He's like, "You can't mess this up, Snoopy. I love Snoopy. Do not mess this up." And I'm like, "Really?" It's like we had group text. I'm like, "Thanks."
It means so much to
It
those
does.
guys. You know, they
Yeah.
all want to see the Snoopy on the front.
Yeah.
It was their unit. You know, it's what it meant to
Yeah.
them.
So we've got, that's the cool thing. That's the best part about meeting Craig. Not only does he journal every day, but he has so many pictures. And he's sent us,
Yeah.
a lot. And we've seen that helicopter from the day he got it, where he's exchanged a logbook, all the way to when he left it there in Vietnam. And still some of the pilots that flew it are still alive. So they have pictures and sending us. So that was a great help to see exactly how this helicopter looked when it was born, I guess.
Yeah. So how do we get this thing from Iowa Western over near the Sumter Amphitheater in Papillion?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's sounding like truck. We were hoping to try to get a Chinook to carry it over there, but it sounds like we're going to take a truck. We're trying to figure out the height situation.
Oh, yeah,
Make
you
sure we
gotta
don't
go
have
on
any
bridges
low
and-
bridges on the
Yeah.
way, so
Yeah.
that's how it's looking like we're going to get it over there.
Yeah. Have you thought at all about what it's going to be like that day? We have all those Vietnam veterans there.
Yeah.
And we have the grand opening. How emotional that's going to be. I mean, for you guys going through this process, but obviously for those folks as well.
Yeah. I mean, you know, being a veteran myself of multiple tours overseas, I can't fathom how they'll feel. You know, I mean, just talking to Craig started crying. I FaceTimed him one day while we were working on the aircraft, and I was showing it to him, and he started crying. I was like, okay, Craig, I gotta go. And, but yeah, I can't even imagine how these guys are gonna feel. I mean, it's a huge honor to be able to give back to them. They deserve this, and it's all about them. And, you know, I hope that when they get there and see that, it draws so much emotion out of them that it's a place of sanctuary, a place of healing, a place of remembering, and looking back, and then getting back with your old friends.
Yeah.
You know, and having those conversations. A lot of the guys that were from Nebraska that went to Vietnam drafted together. You know, they met in MEPS.
They MEPS together, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't, it's going to be really overwhelming, and I hope they feel the overwhelming in a good way, to know that they're appreciated and welcome home.
Yeah. You gonna miss seeing it in the hangar when it's gone.
You
have a lot more room.
I think it's going to look a lot better up on the pole, all
Yeah.
done. But yeah, just in my involvement, I'm not a veteran. I wasn't involved in the Huey in any kind of sense that way, but I'm a lover of machines, and just my admiration of, you know, all the hours that those Hueys put in, and it makes me feel emotional thinking about, you know, getting all these guys together. So I can't imagine what they will feel like.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a once in a lifetime event, and that's why I'm just so glad to get to be a part of it.
And it's going to be something that's, at least for 50 years, we know that's what the initial lease is, but it could be there forever.
Yeah.
To know that something that you worked on is at a
Absolutely.
place like that forever is incredible.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's
I hope to
huge.
go back and, once
Bring
my
your
daughter's all
grandchildren in.
grown up and bring them and say, hey, I fabricated that pitch
Yeah.
link or something like that.
And explain to them what that
Oh
means.
yeah, we have to scrounge, fabricate parts, and kind of. But it's great, and like I said, Ron and I just kind of clicked, and we went right to work figuring out what had to get done, and it's happening. So
Well, we appreciate both you guys
Yeah.
volunteering your time, what you've done.
Sure.
I'm sure the students appreciate it as well. They're getting experience they could get nowhere else.
Right,
They're not going to get
absolutely.
those. There's not a lot of Huey maintenance classes out
No,
there
there aren't.
for college kids.
Not
you don't get
anymore.
that. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks to both you guys for coming in.
absolutely,
my
thanks
pleasure.
for having us.
Thanks
All
for
right,
having
thanks a
us.
lot. All right, join us again next time for more Papillion Unscripted when we again speak to someone who makes Papillion feel like home.